Hello. How's it going? Welcome to Meditation Breaks. This channel is all about meditation, as the name might imply. And each week here, we look at meditation from kind of like a practical lens. We bounce around a lot, how we can use this technique in our modern life to help us for whatever reason we're here, whether it be to be more relaxed or less anxious, or kinder to ourselves. All these things, meditation has a part in helping you there, which I think is the real cool thing about it, is that it's very versatile. So we are going to talk about a topic today, like we do each week, and then meditate on it. But first, we'll talk about meditation on kind of like a super basic level, just in case this is your first time meditating. We we get a lot of new people here each week, and I think it's important to provide a space that is like going over what this thing is before we get into like more specific stuff. So that's how we'll start. And we'll talk about what meditation is, how does it work, why does it work, all those things. And then we will do a little meditation together. All right. And it's going to be short. Don't worry. You're not going to be sitting there for, in silence for like 40 minutes or something like that. It's like 5 minutes. And I'll be guiding. So it won't be that awkward. Okay. So that's our plan. And the last thing I'll say is if you have any questions at any time, feel free to ask me. Best way to get my attention is by putting your question in the chat. If that is something you're not comfortable doing, or you think of something after the class is over, which often happens to me, I'll give my email to everyone later on in the session. All right. Cool. So we're going to get started with a introduction into what the heck this meditation thing even is. So when we think of anything, like, hey, Antonio, when we think of anything, apple, tree, whatever, I'm doing good. How are you? Our mind, like, thinks of this and like makes kind of like an invisible image, right? Like in our mind, like we're picturing apple, we like know what it looks like. It's like a little flash. This is our kind of like generic image of apple, tree, etc. And our generic image of meditation, for most of us, I would venture to guess, is what? Someone sitting down cross-legged, their arms are like this, whatever. This is a kind of has become an iconic image of what meditating is, right? You can meditate sitting down, with your eyes closed, cross-legged or whatever, but that is just a sitting position. It's not, in my opinion, the essence of what meditation is. And in fact, if meditation was restricted to sitting on the floor with our, legs crossed and whatnot, well, that'd be incredibly inconvenient, because I don't know about you, but sometimes it's painful to do that, right? We might not always be physically able to do that. Oh, Antonio, I think I might be going out of town, but I'll shoot you an email after this class. Okay, so the idea of meditating being seated is not really indicative of what meditation is. So if that is not really the essence of meditation, well, what is? So a definition I like to use is that meditation is a technique you can use to Familiarize yourself with something. What does that mean? Familiarize yourself with something, right? Here we're talking a lot about like mental mind states, right? But we don't go around saying I'm going to familiarize my mind with how to, I don't know, cook pasta. I don't know. I think I'm having pasta for dinner. That's what I'm thinking about. So, uh, like, we have to kind of look to something where familiarity is really jumps out at us as to the benefits of becoming really familiar with something. So let's think about something you're really familiar with, like an activity or something like that. I often will use tying your shoe because it's kind of this interesting example of something that when we are born, we don't know what a shoe is. We don't know what a shoelace is. The concept of that is not a thing. Then at some point, we know, hey, these are shoes, but they're Velcro. It's a great invention, by the way. And, we just kind of put them on. And then at some point, somebody's like, no. Why? We should just use Velcro. It's way easier. Somebody's like, no, you have to use laces. And we're like, what? And so then we embark on a really incredible journey of trying to take a single string and make this ornate bow that is like supported for our foot. And I don't know if there's anyone out there who nailed it on the first or 10th time, right? It was really challenging, right? It took a lot of concentration. It took a lot of effort, thought of the mechanics of tying this shoelace to do it. And while we may have failed quite a number of times, over time, we got the hang of it, right? Our mind, our body, we started to become familiar with all of the mechanics that are necessary for tying one's shoe. And then look at you now. You are a absolute expert at shoe tying. Right? Even if you could just think of it. Like you're like, oh yeah, you like know the motions. You are an expert. Right? And so now that you're an expert, what has happened to this activity? It's the same activity. It's not like shoelaces got better, right? The output of becoming really familiar with something, like you are now with tying a shoe, is that it requires less effort, concentration. It's like second nature, right? That kind of phrase gets used a lot. And this is true not just for tying your shoe, but for all things that we've learned, including emotions, like emotional states, how we think about ourselves, what we think about other people. Like all of these things are steeped in familiarity. And this is an awesome realization because we can start to dictate what we want to become familiar with. And that is the essence of what we're trying to do with meditation. It is a technique to start to choose what you want to be familiar with and then do that. That way, those things can start to show up in your life with less effort. They start to become second nature. So, cool. How you do it? So when we start learning meditation, almost always, we start with breathing meditation. And breathing meditation, all it is a meditation where the focal point is our breath. We can have the focal point of a meditation be anything. We use our breath because it's pretty accessible. It travels with you wherever you go. But it doesn't have to be your breath. You can meditate on what it feels like to raise your arm up and down like this. I don't know why you would do that, but go ahead. The cool thing is that no matter what our focal point is, be it our breath, be it moving our arm, be it a concept or an idea, or worry. The method of how we go about meditating on said thing is the same. And more formally, it's known as single pointed concentration. And what that means is what it sounds like. We are going to focus single pointedly on something, in this case, our breath for breathing meditation. Now, are you familiar with focusing on one thing? We might think we are. Are you more focused? Are you more familiar with focusing on a lot of things? Probably, right? Our mind is constantly juggling. We are, it's almost encouraged, it really, in this, like in modern society, like, to be able to work while listening to music and then shopping over here. I don't know, just making stuff up. But like our mind is constantly being asked to juggle. Sometimes directly by us and sometimes just kind of indirectly, right? We hear a sound. What was that? Right? That's our mind having to juggle. Oh, turn head. Let's look over there. We're taking our attention away from the thing we were doing, right? This is happening all day. And as if you think about it, if that was your job, people are just like, hey, look over there. Hey, look over here. Think about that. Oh, don't think about that. Think about this. We'd be like, this is really overwhelming, right? And so our mind kind of gets overwhelmed and we feel really drained. And so teaching our mind that while using its incredible ability to multitask can be beneficial, the opposite of that can also be beneficial. And so we're going to start to train our mind in seeing that. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to do 3 steps. Meditation is really kind of like a 3-step process. The first thing is we're going to choose to do this. That sounds ridiculous. You're here, you've chosen. But sometimes we have this meditative experience unintentionally. Is that a word? Yeah. On accident. We're working on something at work. We lose track of time. We forget to eat. We don't hear all the noises in the office. That stuff happens, right? We're so focused on one thing that all the other stuff that our mind is juggling starts to fade. Right? We want to start to train our mind to know it can do this intentionally, right? And so we're setting an intention, and all that means is you just saying a little something like to yourself, I'm going to focus single pointedly on my breath for the next couple of minutes to the best of my ability. That's it. That's my only task right now. So we choose to do this, and then we do it. We're focusing on our breath, right? And while we are focusing on our breath single pointedly, whenever you notice that you are no longer single pointedly focused on your breath, which happens quite often, we just say not right now to those thoughts. That's our saying here. I like it because these thoughts are not unwanted. They're not bad. They're not distracting. Like they're not those things. They're just thoughts. Your mind thinks. That's what it does. And so what we're saying is, cool, not right now. Right? And then the third step is being able to take your attention from the not right now back into focusing single pointedly on breathing. So this 3-step process is kind of like a little loop. And as you do this, your mind starts to kind of plug in, focused single pointedly on your breath, and there's no more room for all the busyness. And as a result, we kind of feel relaxed, right? Sometimes we think like meditation creates peacefulness, but actually what's happening is this technique that we're going to do together is teaching you to kind of become really familiar with relaxed you. You have a relaxed self inside of you. Shows up a lot, probably more than we think. We want it to show up more, of course. That'd be cool. But it's in there. We don't have to get anything. We're not creating anything. We're just becoming so familiar with relaxed us via this technique that what happens? Relaxed us starts to show up with less effort. Cool? Okay. So we're going to do a little breathing meditation now. You'll notice I'm not on the floor. I'm in a chair. You can sit in a chair. You can sit on the floor if you'd like. You can lay down. You can do whatever you want. You have like one of those cool zero gravity chairs, go for it. Doesn't matter. Just get comfy relatively. Doesn't have to be most comfortable you've ever been in your life. And go ahead and close your eyes. This will help with some visual kind of noise, so to speak. And I'm going to guide us through about a 5-minute breathing meditation. Okay. Whenever you start a meditation, it can be really helpful to check in. Actually ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? In this exact moment. Maybe you're tired from a long day. Maybe you're energetic, excited, happy, sad, whatever it is. We're not doing anything about it. We're just noticing. We're practicing taking an interest, developing a level of curiosity about what our own mind is up to. This is called mindfulness. And it's a really important foundation for being able to put these things we're learning into practice. So just take a moment and check in with yourself. Having done that, you can now set an intention, a little promise to yourself. And that promise is to focus single-pointedly, exclusively on your own breath to the best of your ability for the next couple of minutes. Just let that idea simmer in your mind. This is your only task right now. All the other things can wait. For the next couple of minutes, the only thing that you are here to focus on is your own breath. Set that intention in your mind. And then act on it. Turn your full, undivided attention to your own breath. Breathing in, breathing out, very gently and very naturally. There's no need to change anything about how you normally breathe. You don't have to take big, deep inhales or forcefully exhale air. Just breathe, however comes natural to you. In and out. While you're doing this, at some point, sometimes very quickly, you might notice that your attention is starting to split a bit. It is no longer exclusively focused on breathing. Maybe you're thinking about something you have to do after this class or something that happened earlier today. Whenever you notice your mind starting to be pulled in that direction, we can just say, not right now to those thoughts. We will get to them later. You can actually imagine yourself placing those thoughts beside you, and with them waiting patiently, guide your full, undivided attention back to breathing in and out, gently, naturally. Single-pointedly focused on each moment of each breath. We don't normally think of our breaths in moments. It's just kind of something that's happening in the background. What if we brought it to the foreground? When you breathe in, can you follow the air, watch it as it enters your body? Feel it moving into your lungs. Feel your lungs expanding to make room. Can you feel the energy that you get with each in-breath? And then what about when you breathe outward? Can you follow the air moment by moment? Feel your lungs contract. Watch as the air leaves your body. Watch it dissipate back into the atmosphere, completely mixing with all the other pockets of air. All these things are happening each time we breathe. It is such a brief relationship between you and that pocket of air. But there is so much to enjoy moment to moment within that brief experience. Breathing in, breathing out. Very gently and very naturally. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath as many times as you need to. It does not matter how many times you start to drift. All that matters is noticing and then being able to guide your attention back. That is meditation. You are meditating right now. You're training your mind to become familiar with its natural peacefulness. You're training your mind to focus on what you want to focus on. And right now, the only thing you want to focus on is breathing in and breathing out. Gently, naturally. So for the last few moments here, just enjoy sitting, relaxing, breathing. No need to think about too much. Just take a little time for you. You deserve it. Okay. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. Hello. Welcome back. Congratulations. You did it. You're a meditator. 3 steps. Doesn't mean that it's easy or whatever. In fact, you might have been like, wow, my mind is constantly jumping from place to place. This is totally normal. Doesn't mean you're not good at meditating. Doesn't mean like what any of those things. It just means that this is not something that you do a lot, right? And so you're not familiar with it. Your mind is kind of putting up resistance. It's like, hey, what are you doing with this one focus thing? I can look at me juggle. That's what our mind is showing off, right? We're training our mind to start to realize the benefits of doing this. And it's kind of a slow burn, right? But the goal, if you take nothing else away from, if you're a brand new meditation, the most important thing, I think, is to recognize that the practice, sitting down and doing this, is meditation. There's not good meditation and, I didn't do good, I got distracted. None of that. It's not like that's not a thing. Just doing this, practicing this is the perfect way to do it, which is a hard thing to kind of get behind, but it is helpful if we can kind of get there. Okay, so cool. I'm going to go and talk about our topic for today. So our topic for today, and this whole month, we've been kind of doing a little theme of connecting with other people, recognizing the kindness and importance other people provide to us. And then last week, we looked at giving and started to analyze some more subtle ways that we can give. And if you weren't there, it doesn't matter. You can go and look at that video if you're interested. But the kind of main takeaway is that giving, the physical action of it, starts with the mental action, give. And all actions that we take, all physical actions, walking, talking, hugging, all this stuff, right? It is necessarily preceded by a mental action. All physical actions start here. And so by working on recognizing when we have these kind of thoughts of give, or making that more normalized so we don't have to try so hard to think about it, that in and of itself is a beautiful form of giving. And you all being here are doing that, right? Janice, it's great to see you. Hope you're well. Today we're talking about the idea of like acts of kindness, which giving can fall into that category, but there's a lot of different acts of kindness. And the main thing we're looking at is kind of how we might start to view small acts as actually bigger ones. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But when this word like kindness, I think sometimes it can sometimes trip me up, because this kindness, when we think about it, is really subjective, right? I might do something that I think is kind, and somebody else thinks that's not kind, right? And so like this word, this concept of kindness is, in and of itself subjective. Um, so when we're talking about like acts of kindness, I'm talking about like acts where you have I'm going to say virtuous intention, right? For example, somebody you're walking on the street, you see somebody who is asking for money, presumably they're homeless or whatnot, um, and you're walking with your new boss, and you're like, oh, I'm going to give them some money. All right. Now, is that pure? Is that like, is your intention to help them? Is there a underlying intention of like, oh, this will make me look good in front of my boss? Like, so the act in and of itself, what we're talking about today is more about the intention of it. I don't know if that makes sense. And the only person who knows if your intention is aligned with the action is you. This is a aspect of meditation that can kind of be off-putting sometimes, because we don't like, it's hard to think about that stuff, right? We don't want to feel like we have some like ulterior motive, even though we all do from time to time, and that's okay, right? This is all about being honest with ourselves, using our mind to think clearly, be honest, so we can analyze and make changes if we feel we need to, right? So these acts, these kind of spontaneous acts, they start up here, just like all actions. In order to help somebody, maybe you see somebody who's upset, right? Like your friend's upset. In order to comfort them, maybe you give them a hug or something. Our mind has to think hug, right? And so working on our mind is the number one most important way to start to normalize acts of kindness, like acts of virtuous intention, right? So the cool thing is that your mind, in all of its power, is constantly seeing opportunities to act, right? Maybe we have the thought, oh, you know what, I'm gonna I'm gonna call my sibling, right? That's a small act of kindness, right? You're thinking about them, you call them, they feel that you're thinking about them. I mean, the virtuous intention is that maybe they don't want to talk to you or whatever. I don't know. But the kind of intention there is really beautiful, right? Now, do we always follow through on these things? We have this thought, let me call so-and-so. Do we always do it? Of course not, right? Sometimes we, like, almost immediately after we recognize our mind, like kind of our mind like kind of thinks of something really, nice to do, we start to talk ourselves out of it, right? Maybe we justify why we shouldn't do it. They never call me. I don't know. I'm just making this up. Or we, I'm busy right now. I'll do it later. We wait too long. Moment passes. Maybe then they call us. We feel bad. We distract ourselves. I'm just going to watch this last show. I don't know. Yeah. Or we exaggerate the ramifications of doing so, and kind of, calling our friend is not really, I mean, I guess there can be huge ramifications, but, maybe it's a time thing. Oh, if I do that, then I'm not going to be able to have time to cook or whatever. I don't know. Right? All of these things are constantly going on in our mind, and it makes it challenging to follow through on the kind of awesome, spontaneous mental acts of kindness that our mind is surfacing, right? So, um, recognizing this is really important. Um, if we don't recognize that we sometimes are doing this, then we just kind of are going left and right and up and down, and sometimes we do something nice and sometimes we don't. So in the beginning of our meditation, we talked about noticing how you're feeling right now, noticing what your mind is up to. This is why that's so important. This building up a technique in noticing things, noticing feelings, noticing what your mind is thinking, right? Okay, cool. So we know that mental actions are important. We know that our mind is kind of given a lot of opportunities, and we take them sometimes and not others. Sometimes we don't take these opportunities because we feel like it's insignificant, right? This idea of acts of kindness being small or large, insignificant, meaningful, right? Is there such thing as a small act of kindness? It's an interesting thing to think about, right? Like, again, I think it's kind of subjective, right? What I might consider to be a small act, you might consider to be not, like, very impactful, right? These are kind of these words: small, large, meaningful, insignificant. They're just labels, and they're labels that we're using to try to sort things into categories, right? To create certainty in our choice. Oh, I will do this because this has a large impact. I will not do this because this has a small impact. Right? But the impactness, being small or not, is it is very flexible depending on the situation, right? And so what I like to do is, instead of thinking of these as, oh, this is going to be really impactful, this is not, I say, I don't know. Which is a funny phrase, because when we hear I don't know, we don't like, I don't know. I don't know means like, we're unsure, we're uncertain, we're wrestling with something. But here, this idea of I don't know is really beautiful, because it's very real. We don't know if this act is going to be impactful or not. We think it might, we think it might not, but we don't know. So if we start to think about these situations as, I don't know, what happens? Something to think about. I'm going to tell a little story. This is a story I tell when I teach this class. This is not a story to make you be like, Keith's a good guy. It's just this concept of acts of our tendency to label small act, insignificant, large act, significant. This experience was what really kind of jarred this for me. Right? So I lived in New York for a really long time. I live in Colorado now. And I worked in New York City for like 10 years. And that's a big city. There are a lot of people. And there is a lot of people who do not have the comfort and means that us more fortunate do, right? And when you're in that when you're surrounded by that for so long, I feel like you can kind of become desensitized to it almost, right? So one day I was going to get lunch on my lunch break, and I passed by somebody who had a cardboard sign asking for some financial assistance. This is not an unusual thing in a big city. I'm sure we've all experienced this before. And as I was walking by them, I noticed that they were crying. And do you know what my first thought was? Maybe it's not my first. My first thought was like, oh, they're crying, right? There's my mind is like, hey, this person's having a problem. This person's, feeling upset. And I remember my kind of mind starting to like immediately talk myself out of it. And like, this is going to sound cruel, but this is what I thought. I was like, I wonder if they're doing that on purpose to make it seem to like make people feel worse for them. It's like a crazy thing to think, but and that's what I thought, and so I passed by, and that was that. A couple days later, I go back out to lunch, walk by the same spot. I am a creature of habit, and they're there again, and they have a sign, and they're crying. And I had this thought. I'm like, what if that's not like, my original thought was like, what is this all like a act or whatever? Like, what if it's not an act? Right? Do I know? And the answer is no, I don't know. I have no idea. But on taking on face value here, I can see this person's upset. Right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go give them $1. Right? So I gave him $1 and then I went about my day. Right? A couple days later, I come back, this person's there again. And I'm like, I don't know. I just had this like feeling. I'm gonna go say hi to them. Right. And so I went up and I go, hi, I'm Keith. What's your name? And they looked at me like surprised. It was really interesting. And they said, no one's ever asked me that. And this person's name was Steve, and we started to chat, and we had a really fun conversation. And then for the next, it must have been like 6 months, every time I would go out for lunch, I would walk past there, see if Steve is there, and I would say, hi, what's up? And I would just have a normal conversation with him. Sometimes I would give him money if I had that to give. So other times just saying hello. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. You want one? And after a while, sometimes he'd be like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, what? What do you mean you're good? This will help, right? And so what started to happen here is my idea of what actions lead to, like what actions have impact, started to become not as clear as I had thought, right? And so I started to think about, okay, let me just kind of continue on doing this. I got him a holiday card for, holidays. And I think there was an incident at the homeless shelter that they were at, and they lost their backpack with all that stuff, and they were like devastated. And I'm like, I can't believe, I'm so sorry you lost all your things. They're like, your card was in there. And I'm like, wow, man, like that to me, writing a card, happy holidays, Keith, is a insignificant act. But for Steve, it was not. It was huge. It was massive. It made him feel like he should feel, this like equanimity of around us. And to cut this, I mean, I had a really cool relationship with him, and he eventually, one time I went to go see him, and he was super excited. He's like, I got housing, and he's like, like he said thank you so at least thank you so much, like, and I'm like, what did I do? I did nothing. I got a cup of coffee here and there. It's nothing. And he goes, it's not nothing for me, right? And so this really stuck with me. And again, this is not like, oh, Keith helping everyone. It's my preconceived notion of this is impactful, this is not, was completely disrupted by this instance, right? And that was a really good lesson for me in embracing I don't know. Embracing I don't know led to something really wonderful, right? And maybe it won't always, but it might. We don't know, right? Anyway, that's a really personal story for me. I think about it a lot, and we all probably have stuff like that we can connect to, and it's all in service of kind of embracing this. Well, I don't know if this action is going to have a big impact, so let me just try. That's the takeaway. So that's like the difference. If we're like, no, this won't have an impact, we won't do it. But if we say, I don't know, now, maybe. And that is kind of a really beautiful thing, right? I don't know. It's using this phrase that sometimes we find to be off-putting, and realizing that there's a lot of beauty in that phrase. Cool. Okay. So we're going to do a little meditation together, and it'll be some breathing meditation, and then we'll do, I'll kind of weave in a little bit of what we were talking about here. Cool? Okay. Go ahead and get comfy. Take a moment and check in with yourself. Ask yourself, how am I doing right now? What's my mind up to? We're not comparing it to before. Before is done. Just now. What's your mind up to? And having checked in, we can now bring back that intention that we had before, to focus single-pointedly on our own breath, moment to moment, for the next couple of minutes, to the best of our ability. Let that idea, that thought, that wish sit in your mind. And then you can act on it. You can turn your full, undivided attention to breathing in and breathing out very gently and very naturally. And if at any point you notice that your attention is drifting, maybe you're thinking about something that was said earlier, a sound, something you have to do later, whatever it is, we can just say, not right now, to those thoughts. We have our task. And we'll get to those thoughts later. Place those thoughts beside you, and then turn your full attention back to your breath. Breathing in, breathing out, gently, naturally. Having spent some time doing breathing meditation, maybe we are feeling even slightly more relaxed. Our mind is slightly more clear. We can use that more clear mind to think about something. I'm just going to lead a little kind of thought experiment. And just like you were meditating on your breath single pointedly, now I'd like you to focus single pointedly on what I'm saying. I'd like you to imagine that you are walking down the street. You're on the sidewalk. Wherever that is, just bring this image to mind. Where are you? What do your surroundings look like? Is it a city? Is it not? Really place yourself there, walking at a steady pace on a sidewalk. And as you're walking, you see a piece of trash on the ground. Small piece of trash, maybe a wrapper for some snack. And we notice this, and our mind thinks, oh, litter. I should throw that away. Our mind has this spontaneous wish to do a nice act, to pick up this piece of trash, throw it away. But so quickly after, you have this initial thought, and we start to think, well, it's dirty. I don't want to touch it. Or maybe we think, that's not my job. I got my job. And so we start to allow our wandering mind to begin to talk ourselves out of following through on this awesome mental act of kindness. And we might think, well, whatever, it's just a small piece of trash. It's quite insignificant when you think about it. Do you know that for sure? Can you say with 100% certainty that picking up this piece of trash, putting it into a trash can, will not have a large impact? We might be fairly sure it won't, but we cannot say for certain. The only thing that is certain is we don't know. maybe you pick up this piece of trash, you put it in the trash can, and then whoever's job it is to clean up the sidewalk has one less thing to do, and maybe that one less thing to do lets them get home on time to their family to see their kids before they go to bed. Maybe. We can't say with certainty that that won't happen. And so, why not take a shot? We can often view meditation as something insignificant, mental actions as insignificant, not impactful. But we don't know. You learning to meditate might completely change the way you look at the world around you. You might become so familiar with the power of small acts of kindness that they no longer are small and you no longer have to think about them. You just do them. Wouldn't that be wonderful? How can we say that that isn't a massive impact? So, for the last few moments, just let this thought sit with you that all acts that we label small, large, meaningful, and not, we don't know. We don't know the impact they'll have. And so we can try. Okay. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Hello. So we did breathing meditation and then we kind of pivoted a little bit, but what we did was still meditation. We were meditating on a thought, right? Or a concept or like a scenario that we're thinking of. And there's so many interesting things that we can glean from that. And that's kind of the beauty of meditation is that we can use it for, something like relaxing, but we can also use it for something like analyzing how impactful our actions are, which is kind of like a pretty big thing to think about, right? And it's all done using the same kind of steps. Right? Anyway, that's it for today. Sorry I kept you not late yet, but okay, now you are. Sorry. Definitely went on a little bit, but hopefully you enjoyed this class. Found it to be interesting, thought provoking, relaxing, all of the above. If so, come on back next week. I think next week's going to be our last class, probably for the year, just because I'm traveling. I might do one before New Year's, so we'll see. Rosa, thank you. That means a lot to me. All right. Thank you. Rob, thank you. Good to see you, my friend. Okay. So come on back next week. We're going to do some more meditation stuff. If you were like, hey, meditation's pretty cool. I would like to see where I can go with this. I offer private instruction. It's really good for focusing on things that are important to you. Maybe you're like, nah, I got the whole acts of kindness thing down. What I really need to work on is insert thing you want to work on. We can really focus on that. So if that is interesting to you, email me and we'll find a time. I do it all virtually, digitally. Virtually, it's pretty laid back. I'm a pretty laid back person. So if that's interesting to you, email me and we can find a time that would work. I am going to put my email in the chat right now. It is keith@meditationbreaks.com. I spelled my name wrong there, so I'm fixing it. Cool. That's a properly spelled name. Lucia, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Janice, it is so great to see you. I hope you're doing well. Andy, oh, I'm glad. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you all for being here. I do love teaching. It is a really, it's a very joyful part of my life. And you all make that possible. We all have very busy lives, a lot of people asking for our attention. And each week you come here and you spend time with me and have a curious mind, and it's awesome. And I just wanted to thank you all for the time that you give to me. Thank you. Hopefully you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, Janice. It's great seeing you again.